Moments like this make you very thankful for being an investor. Looking back at the public count, 3 years ago today, $1.1 million in that portfolio. Today, over $3.6 million at the close. What a past 3 years it has been. Anybody that has been investing for the past 3 years that's watching this video right now, which I hope every single one of you have been investing this past 3 years that's watching this video right now, congratulations to you guys. I'm sure you're at or very close to all-time highs in your portfolio. Now, meanwhile, I posted this inside my private stock group today. I said the market has been red hot the past 3 months as well as the past 33 months. I need to keep you guys focused on the fundamentals in periods like this. Balance sheets, income statements, PE ratios, projections, margins, etc. Success can make investors lazy, very lazy. We can't afford to get lazy or complacent, eye on the prize. Because if you get lazy in time periods like this, if you get complacent in time periods like this, in that next big bear market, it will roll you right out of this market. Now, here today, I sold another 200 shares of Palantir stock. I got $149.46 for those shares. That was another $29,800 here today. Palantir is down to my fifth biggest position in the public count, sitting on still another 1,931% gain in regards to Palantir stock. The cost basis total now is $11,000, and the current value is $224,000. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I have now taken $568,000 in profits in the public count this year in 2025. That is incredible. Like, I am on pace for by far and away my biggest year I've ever had in regards to profits taken. I mean, it's just been ridiculous. I posted that on my X. If you don't follow me on X, by the way, I always have that linked in the description area down there. This should be the first time ever, and I might have already cleared it if I add up all my portfolios, but this should be the first time ever I've taken over $1 million in profit in a single year. If I'm not at it already, I'm probably pretty dang close between the public count and all my private portfolios as well. So unbelievable, man. And I might even be able to afford to get these babies repainted because they look like they're in a little bit of a struggle. Now, how perfect is this? Folks, you gotta be kidding me. You gotta be flipping my flapjacks. Are you seeing what's going on? We're hitting all-time highs and commodities are doing absolutely nothing. The GSG commodity index is up only 1.7% the past year. Like, it can't get more perfect than this. You got to be kidding me. Like, this is so perfect. But you can't have everything perfect in life. There's always got to be one thing. You could have, 10 friends that are happy, but you got one friend that's unhappy, right? You could have 10 family members that are happy and one that's unhappy. It's never, not everything's always perfect, right? You could like most of your coworkers, but not all of them. One of them's out to get you, right? Honest. On a stock, perfect example, this stock has gone nowhere the past 3 months. It's down 0.8% the past 3 months. Meanwhile, the stock market's been tremendous the past 3 months, right? You're looking at a stock like Elf on a Shelf. Yeah, Elf on the Shelf's had an incredible past 3 months, up 91%. But man, recently, the stock has been anything but perfect, right? Just going down. Adobe stock, only up 2%. 2% the past 3 months, right? That stock is asleep. It's blah. And that's a stock I've been buying a lot of shares in over the past few months here. But the stock is not doing anything in the short term, right? So in today's video, I want to cover 4 core subjects, okay? First one, why am I cashing Palantir stock? What's going on there, okay? Second subject, would I call Palantir stock a bubble? I've heard some folks talk about, is Palantir a bubble? As somebody that's called out many bubble stocks in the past, I want to speak about this subject. Would I classify Palantir as being in a bubble, or is it just a situation, let's just call it not very ideal, risk-reward profile? We'll talk about that in this video here today. 3, what do you focus on to make the most money in a stock market like we're in right now? We're going to get into that in this video as well. And the 4th subject I'll cover in this video is stocks that, let's call it, are just asleep right now, right? Honest, Elf, Adobe. I'm going to cover stocks like that in this video and kind of tell you what's going on there, where those stocks are headed, and those sorts of things. One thing only I need from you guys. Smash the like button on this video. Hit that like button. Make it glow. That's all I need from you. I hope you appreciate me sharing today's video. We do not talk a lot about when I sell stocks in the channel. You know why? Because it doesn't happen that often. Like, usually I'll buy into a stock and I'm holding them for years, right? Palantir is a stock I've held for many years now at this point in time. And so when I do talk about this subject, it's very important to watch every second of this video, to come back to this video in the future Listen to my reasoning, because it's not, I talk about buying stocks all the time because I'm buying stocks all the time. Every week I buy stocks. Every single week I buy stocks. How often do I sell stocks? It could be months between a sell and a next sell. Like, it's few and far between, right? And additionally, I hope you guys really appreciate today's video, because for me to come out and talk about why I'm selling a stock that has been a very important stock to me, it's a big deal. And the last time I really did this with a super popular stock was Tesla. Back in January of 2021, I started talking about Tesla, even though it was my biggest, Tesla actually grew to my biggest position in my portfolios. And I talked about Tesla back there. Then the valuation's getting out of control. The stock is not a very good setup for the next several years, right? And here we are, 54 months later, right? Go, run a chart all the way back to January 2021. 54 months later, and what does Tesla have to show? 8% of a gain. 8%, folks. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 is up 63% over the past 54 months. The Qs are up 74%. Meta's up 169%. ELF's up 353%. NVIDIA's up 1,135%. So basically, Tesla's gone nowhere for the past 54 months. And you would have been better off having your money in treasuries the past 54 months. Tesla's losing to treasuries, and Tesla's getting whacked by inflation the past 54 months, right? So when I talk about these subjects, very important. Very, very important. I hope you guys appreciate me sharing something like we're getting into in this video here today, because this is big, okay? So why am I doing it? Why am I selling Palantir stock? Well, today I cashed another 200 shares of Palantir stock, okay? Now, you keep in mind, it's not like I'm selling out of my shares completely. I'm selling them out in batches when it comes to Palantir stock. And we'll talk about if I'm going to continue to sell those shares or not, right? The thing you got to understand about Palantir is it's been in a lovely cycle for the past, 2 to 2.5 years now at this point in time. A lovely cycle is when a company just continues to show revenue growth acceleration, not revenue growth. Revenue growth is whatever. Like I could give you a list a mile long of companies that have consistently produced revenue growth. You're special when you can have revenue growth acceleration, right? Which is what has happened with Palantir consistently, quarter after quarter after quarter for 2+ years now at this point in time, right? Went from 12% growth to 16% growth to 19% growth to 20% growth to 27% growth to 30% growth to 36% growth to 39% growth, right? So the question is, where's the top for Palantir? Is it 40%? Is that going to be the top and then they start heading down from there? 45%? 50%? We don't know, but I would say we're pretty close to a top in regards to Palantir's revenue growth acceleration. The revenue growth acceleration phase is getting close to an end here. As in, I wouldn't be surprised if it ends next quarter. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends 3 quarters from now. But we're let's call it deep into this revenue growth acceleration. And what happens after a revenue growth acceleration period is then you begin to have a revenue growth deceleration period, where let's say you get your revenue growth up to 44%, let's say hypothetically, right? And then it goes down to like 40%. Then down to like 38%, then down to like 35%, right? And you kind of go through that cycle. Now, Palantir in the last growth cycle got all the way up to a shocking, this is a huge number, 49% revenue growth rate in the last cycle. Folks, let that sink in for a moment. 49%, that's 10 percentage points higher than where Palantir's revenue growth is right now. Now, do keep in mind, Palantir is a much bigger company today when it comes to their income statement, their revenue. So, it's harder for Palantir to get up to a 49% number, but they got up there. But then what happened is after Palantir went through that revenue growth acceleration phase and the numbers are getting bigger and bigger and going up, it started to go down. And it went down to 35%, 34%, 30%, 25%, 21%, 17%, and all the way down to 12% at the lows, right? Brutal. Now, what happened to Palantir? And by the way, they kept growing that whole period. It's not like their revenue ever went negative. No, even at their worst, they were still growing double digits. But what happened to the stock price when they were going through that revenue growth deceleration phase? Well, Palantir's stock price went down 80+% over that time. versus a Q's that was down about 7% and S&P 500 up about 6%. And Palantir went through an 80% plus fall. Absolutely brutal. And this wasn't even the lows for Palantir. Palantir lows was in the fives. I remember Palantir being like 598 at the lows, like really, really bad. Okay. Now, I have good news for everybody watching this video that maybe is a Palantir shareholder right now. I have really good news for you. Okay. I do not see things getting this bad over the next 2 years. I think Palantir's revenue growth likely peaks probably in the next, I'd say 1 to 3 quarters here, okay? And then the deceleration phase starts, okay? I do not see it going that bad, where Palantir goes from 49% revenue growth down to 12%. So that's the good news, okay? I don't think it's going to get that brutal in regards to that. That was a rather dramatic situation that happened here, right? Now, somebody in my private stock group member, he said, do you think the stock price will remain elevated as long as the growth is sustained above 40%? For 40% plus for consecutive quarters with no major dips, will the stock price even if growth plateaus at 40%? And so I framed it like this. I said, usually, because I want everybody to really understand this on a deep level in regards to revenue growth acceleration phases and deceleration phases, okay? And why it matters so much for a stock price. I said, usually when revenue growth deceleration starts for a high flyer, it gets wrecked over that next 12 plus months. Momentum traders move on, growth investors start to head toward the exits. As simple as possible, growth acceleration quarter after quarter equals a higher stock price. Growth deceleration quarter after quarter equals a lower stock price. The more dramatic the deceleration or acceleration is, the more dramatic the stock price move, which is exactly a great example of Palantir, right? This was a very dramatic, when you go from 49% revenue growth down to 12% in a 2-year span, that's dramatic. And what ends up happening is a dramatic downward move for the stock, which is why the stock went down 80+%, right? On the flip side, when you go from, 12% revenue growth all the way up to 40% revenue growth, guess what happens? A dramatic move up in the stock price. And that's why Palantir a few years ago was a $5, $6 stock. And here today, Palantir is about a $150 stock because of how dramatic that change has been. Okay, so it's very important everybody understands this. I said, but if they can maintain a 40% revenue growth rate for the next 5 years straight, I said the stock could maintain the current valuations. Gains would be somewhat limited, but a stock crash is unlikely if quarter after quarter, year after year, they grow in the 40% range. It's as simple as that, folks. It's as simple as that, okay? Now, let me begin to take you through my projections for where I see Palantir stock going over the next 4 or 5 years, my bull case, my base case, and my bear case for Palantir. And you guys will begin to understand here why the risk reward is not as attractive. Okay, here we go. So this is my bull case for Palantir. Listen, this is extremely bullish if Palantir was to pull this off. Listen, do I expect Palantir to do this? The answer is absolutely not. I would put odds that Palantir puts up these sorts of numbers for the next several years. I would put the odds on this at, I would call it less than 5% probability. I might even take it down to like a 2% probability, right? I live in Vegas. We put odds on everything in this city, okay? Yeah, the odds that this happens, extremely low. I'd be a very happy camper if it does, very low, okay? So a very bullish scenario, and like insanely bullish scenario for Palantir would be this company 2026 through 2029 grows revenue 40% per year, year after year after year after year. That'd be insane. Not only do they do that, but their net income far outstrips their revenue growth. So they grow 20 percentage points more net income than they do revenue. Insanely bullish if that was to happen. Not very probable at all, but let's say it did. 60% year after year after year after year. That would put them at net income margins of well over 50%. That would be a ridiculous number. Not very realistic, but we're rolling with it, okay? Now, you could say a stock growing like that, that's kind of a SaaS type business model, right? You could throw easily 100 to maybe even a 200 P ratio on a stock like that, which then would put the stock somewhere between about $350 and $700 come 2029, which would give you a compounded annual growth rate on the low end of 24% and on the high end of 47%. So if that insanely bullish scenario plays out, sure, you're going to make a lot of money in Palantir stock the next few years. But once again, I would put the odds on this at less than 5%, probably closer to 2%, okay? Like, if you're going to flip a coin 100 times, like, it's only going to come up positive twice for the whole Palantir situation, okay? What about my base case for Palantir? Like, what do I actually expect for Palantir to do for numbers from, basically 2025 to 2029? Here's what I expect. My base case for Palantir has them growing revenue in 2026, 36%, revenue in 2027, 33%, revenue in 2028, 30%, and then 2029, 27%. So I have them like having a slight deceleration year after year after year, but still, even in 2029, still growing 27% revenue. That'd still be very impressive. That would put them at revenue come 2029 nearly $12 billion. That would be a big come up for the company, a big come up, okay? Additionally, I have their net income growth growing 10 full percentage points faster, 1,000 basis points faster than their revenue, right? That would put them at net income margins of 42% come 2029. I think that's possible. I really think that's possible for Palantir, okay? Now, for a company growing top line 27%, bottom line 37%, you're probably, for a SaaS-ish related type company like a Palantir, you're going to probably slap a 100 to 120 P ratio on a stock like that with those sorts of growth rates in this category. Puts a stock somewhere between about 215 and about 258. Gives you a compounding annual growth rate of 10% on the low end, 15% on the high end. So there's money to be made, but it's not a lot, man. It's not a lot. And those numbers I'm expecting are very strong. What happens if things are a little more bearish? Now, this isn't even a super bearish case for Palantir. This is just a bear case for Palantir. Well, here's what you're looking at. In a bear case for Palantir, I have them growing 35% in 2026 top line, down to 30% in 2027, down to 25% in 2028, down to 20% in 2029, okay? I have their net income growth still, even in a bearish scenario, still growing a whole 500 basis points quicker than revenue each year. 40% 2026, 35% 2027, 30% 2028, and 25% 2029, okay? Now, what does that do? I'd say that probably, with revenue growth decelerating, like you're probably going to command for a company in this category probably between a 60 and an 80 P ratio come 2029, if they're still growing at 20% top line, 25% bottom line, which is very respectable. What do you get? You get a negative return. You get a negative return. This stock come 2029 would be priced somewhere between about $99 and about $132. So year after year after year, so many years would have went by and you would have lost money. Not made money, you would have lost money, okay? This is the issue with Palantir now at this point in time. The risk reward in regards to Palantir is no longer attractive. If somebody wants to buy it for the next month or two because they think earnings are going to be another banger, they're going to show another revenue growth acceleration, we're going to have another hype cycle with the stock, I get it. But the risk reward for holding the stock over the next 4 to 5 years is not attractive in my opinion, because the valuation's been so pushed so far. I mean, you're looking at, forward Ps and 2-year forward Ps in the 200s. It's just, it's gone to just insane levels now at this point in time. The market capitalization for Palantir is way into the $300 billions now at this point in time, right? With potentially a lot of share dilution coming down the pipe here from basically the stock going so insane. And a lot of, let's call it insiders in the company potentially getting a lot of shares of stock coming. So, I mean, these are all things you got to factor in here. The risk reward is just no longer very attractive in regards to Palantir, especially if you're buying the stock. Even if you're holding the stock, it's not getting very attractive anymore. But if you're buying the stock, you are playing with fire if you hold the stock past 26, essentially, okay? Now, here's my deal in regards to Palantir. Okay, am I going to sell more shares? My plan is, if this stock continues to go risk on, let's say the numbers are a banger, they show another revenue growth acceleration, let's say they get up to 43, 44% revenue growth acceleration, the stock goes well over 150, let's say the next thing you know, the stock's 170, 175, whatever. I'm going to sell another 500 shares of Palantir, essentially, okay, after this earnings, if, big if, the stock goes huge risk on again, okay? And just everybody's losing their mind over this. And then my opinion with Palantir, what I'm likely going to end up doing is I'll likely hold 1,000 shares for the super long term, right? Just in case I'm wrong about Palantir, and let's say Palantir over the next 5-10 years becomes a multi-trillion-dollar market cap, right? Like let's say they do have a scenario where they grow 40% plus a year for years and years and years to go in the future. Like maybe I'm wrong about Palantir in that bull case that I say is, let's call it a less than 5% probability. Maybe it comes true. At least I'll have some skin in the game, 1,000 shares there that I can still make really good money on. But if what I think is going to happen with this company from 2026 to 2029, it's not going to be a good hold. It's going to be likely a money loser or like a flatline stock, essentially, right? So that's kind of my plans with Palantir. Cash another 500 if this stock goes huge risk on into year end, and then hold the other 1,000 shares for the long term, right? Which is something I was doing with Tesla for quite a while. The only reason I ended up selling out of Tesla completely is obviously because of the old Elon Musk, completely sidetracked on politics and all that stuff. That's what made me say, you know what, I got to get out of the stock completely. So, that's what I'm looking at in regards to Palantir. Now that leads us to the next very important question. Would I call Palantir stock a bubble? The B word, a bubble. Well, if you've been watching my channel for a long, long time, well over 6 years ago, I did a video called "This is the biggest stock market bubble I've ever seen in the stock market," right? And in that video, at first, I talk about how the 3D printing stocks were a huge bubble, and that was like a bubble before I even got on YouTube, okay? But in that video, I talked about a stock named Tilray, and I think I talked about Kronos and maybe another one or two, okay? And these were the pot stocks that were just red hot back then, okay? I think Tilray's down something like probably 90 to 99% since I did that video, essentially. They try to do, from what I remember, I think they try to do a bunch of reverse splits and whatever. But at the end of the day, like if you were buying Tilray stock on the day I posted that video, you probably lost 99% of your money or maybe 100% of your money since that time, right? And I did that video on September 19th, 2018. It was a huge, huge bubble in the market at that particular time. Rivian stock. Somebody actually was watching this video recently and left a comment, and I forgot I even did this video. Rivian stock at that time was $168 when I did that video. I said, this will get ugly. Rivian stock is a massive bubble. And people were so hyped on Rivian at that particular time. Since that video's come out, I believe Rivian's down. I want to say Rivian's down over 90% since that video came out, right? It was a huge, huge, huge bubble in the stock market, okay? But listen, Tilray and Rivian were different than a Palantir. Tilray and Rivian had major issues in their business model. Big difference between Palantir and what's going on with Palantir and what was going on with somebody like a Rivian or somebody like Tilray or some of those other companies. Tilray and Rivian had very questionable business models, losing massive amounts of money, right? Like Palantir doesn't have that. We don't have question marks about like, can Palantir's financials be good in 2-5 years from now? No. Like the issue with Tilray and Rivian is if you invest in those stocks when everybody was talking about those, when they were just making that insane run, like you fast forward 5 years, you lose 90% plus your capital, right? Between 90% and 100%. If you buy Palantir today, I don't foresee you necessarily losing 90% to 100% of your capital. I see it being a situation where if we fast forward 5 years from now, maybe you have very small gains on it, maybe you have small losses on it, or maybe the stock's roughly flat 5 years from now, from where you're buying it today. So you buy it at 150, you might have a small gain on it from here for the 5 years out. You might have a small loss, or you might be like, that's a way different situation than what I could foresee in regards to Rivian and Tilray. Rivian and Tilray, it's like people are probably going to lose 90% to 100% of their capital. It's very, very different than a Palantir situation, okay? Palantir has major valuation problems, major risk-reward problems, not major business model problems. Tilray and Rivian had major business model problems with the valuation problems, and that's how you get a stock to fall 90 to 100%, okay? Very different than Palantir, and you got to understand that, okay? Now, what do you focus on in a market like this to make money, okay? And then we'll get an honest ELF, Adobe, stocks like that, okay? Listen very close. There's some of you guys out there that have been buying stocks over this past year, right? Maybe even over the past 2 years. You got in the market, you kind of got lucky, you threw some money around, right? And you weren't doing all the things you got to do to be sustainably, let's call it, a great investor over the long term. When I think about somebody that's putting in the work to be a great long-term investor, it's somebody that's listening to conference calls. They're looking at income statements, balance sheets for the companies. If you have stocks, you need to audit your portfolio right now. Look at your portfolio. Maybe you hold 7 stocks. Have you looked at the income statement of all 7 stocks? Have you looked at the balance sheet of all 7 stocks? Have you run 4 and 5 year projections on those stocks? Have you listened to a conference call to those stocks? If you have not, you should be ashamed of yourself. You're not playing this game right, and you will get obliterated in the next bear market. When I say obliterated, I'm talking about you won't be able to come back from it. You will be done. Great investors make it through the bear markets, out to the other side. You can get through a 2022, a 2020, a great financial crisis. That's what great investors do. You do enough research work that gets you through those tough ones. When you go through a market that's tough for maybe a few months, a few quarters, or maybe in a few years. Great investors were able to get through the tech bubble popping. All that stuff. You don't put in the work, you will not make it through. You will get pounded and you will leave the market. And that's what will happen. And so, if, when it comes to like projections, running projections on stock, use 1000xstock.com for that. If you don't use 1000x, set up your own projections, set up your own Excel sheets and revenue growth projections and all that. Like you could do that. It might take you a few hours to set it up, but you can do that. But you run your projections on your stocks. You don't run projections on a stock. What's a fair PE for a stock? What's fair revenue growth, net income growth, right? What's a company's earnings per share? You don't do that. You're lost in this game. You don't even, that's like flying, that's like being a pilot and flying with no computer system and your window's all blacked out and filled with fog so you can't see anything. That's like flying an airplane like that. Literally, like that's the equivalent in the stock market of not running projections on your stocks. You have to run your projections. That's what at least gives you an idea on if the risk reward is attractive or not. You don't do that. Like, what are you doing in this game? No, you might say, I can look at an income statement. I can look at a balance sheet for my stock, but I don't know what the freak is going on. Like, I don't know like how to run a projection on a stock. That's okay. I have the private group to help you and explain all that for you. I got all the course curriculums that can teach you all this stuff. Take you up to a much higher level, get you out of gambling phase into like being a pilot that actually has his instruments and actually can like see out the window instead of like a guy that's just flying blind out there. I teach it all to you. You could be part of our Discord chat with the high level discussions and all that stuff. You can get access to 1000xstocks.com. I got it all for you, man. I got it all for you. Just today inside the private group, I did a 20+ minute video just on investigating balance sheets and looking at different balance sheets in different industries and explaining what makes this balance sheet good, what makes this balance sheet bad, taking people very in depth with the different line items and explaining all that. That's what you got to do to become a great investor, okay? That's what you got to do. So anyways, pin comment down there. You can click on that, fill out a form, get you in the private group, get you up to a much higher level than where you're at so you stop flying blind in this game because you will end up crashing your plane. I'll just put it like that, okay? Next up here, Honest, Elf, Adobe. What's going on with these stocks, okay? So here's the deal, okay? Honest, stock hasn't gone anywhere in 3 months. Well, since earnings came out, have we heard anything? No, there's nothing. Like the earnings, the last time they had earnings in a conference call was good. But there's no news. There's nothing for people to get excited about. And remember, this is a company that's very heavily, I would say, handled by smaller funds and smaller investors in general, retail investors, right? It's not like this is some, $50 billion market cap or something like that just gets inflows from being in the S&P 500. So for Honest, like there's no news about the stock. There's nothing coming out. So people are just kind of get bored of it and they start to slowly sell out of the stock, right? Even though there's nothing wrong with the business, there's anything. It's just people start to sell, because there's no news, there's nothing. So for Honest right now, we're just waiting on earnings, right? And listen, if you guys want, if you're an Honest shareholder and you want more news, reach out to the investor relations page. Reach out to the investor relations of Honest. You can literally go right to their investor relations page, type in Honest investor relations, and let them know. Send them a message. Say, hey man, you guys never post any news. Like, it's not good enough just to post earnings every 3 months and then say peace out. Like, hear from us again in 3 months. You look at all these other companies that are great stocks in good companies on top of that, right? They got news cycle all the time. Dude, Palantir, the king stock, over the past few years, Palantir seems like it's in the news every freaking day. Palantir got a contract over here. Palantir did something with the White House. Palantir, blah, blah, blah. There's always like news coming out with Palantir. Nvidia, one of the best stocks to be in the past few years. It seems like you can't go a week without NVIDIA launching some new product, some new service, or hearing about something, or some expansion, or, Jensen's doing an interview talking about blah, blah, blah. Honest, it's like 3 months go by, you don't hear anything. And so you can reach out to the investor relations, tell them, hey, man, we want to hear more stuff. I don't care if you guys freaking launch 2 new products in a Walmart. Let us know. Just keep us in the loop so people don't get bored and say, you know what, I don't want to hold the stock anymore, right? Additionally, their email address is right on the investor relations page. So you can send it through the form, you can send it through there, right? Come on. We gotta get this done. If worse comes to worse, I think Jessica Alba's still on the board of directors at Honest. She's not in management anymore, but I think she's on the board of directors. Send her a DM. I'm sure she'll get back to you. Okay? That's Honest. People are just bored. They're just waiting for the next earnings, right? Elf on a shelf. So, elf on a shelf. What's going on here? Stock's done tremendous past 3 months, up 90+%, but recently it's been weaker, right? Well, this is why you got to watch the reaction channel. 3 days ago, I did a video on the reaction channel called "One of My Stocks Just Crashed," right? Because people were talking about Elf, like, hey, what's going on with Elf? I'd love to hear about this one, right? And I explained it all in that Elf video there, right? I explained it to folks. Profit taken. Listen. Elf went up 100+% in a 3-month span, right? At some point, it was up like 140% from the bottom. People are going to take some profits on a stock that goes up 140% in 3 months. I've never seen it where it hasn't happened. NVIDIA. Throughout NVIDIA's runs, guess what's happened? There's been phases in this run that people have taken profits, where all of a sudden NVIDIA will go down 20, 30, 40, 50% in a pretty quick amount of time. Because people say, you know what, I'm taking profits. Palantir. Has Palantir just gone up straight line the past 3 years? Nope. There's been plenty of pauses with Palantir stock, and plenty of times people took profits, and all of a sudden the stock would go down 10, 20, 30%. Like that. So no stock just goes up straight to the moon and never goes down. That's not the way this happens. And the more dramatic the move is, especially if you're talking about over a 3 or 6 month span, the more dramatic usually the downward move is when the momentum cycle chills for a bit. Then all of a sudden you get a 10, 20, 30, 40% drop in a stock quick, okay? And it happens to all of them. And so that's what happened. And by the way, if you don't follow me on the reaction channel, it's called Jeremy Lefebvre Makes Money. You should follow me on there because I cover subjects like this, right? And explain them. Plus I react to, Wall Streeters and all that sort of stuff and their opinions. So anyways, that's what's going on there, man. People are going to take profits, especially, remember, not everybody in the stock market. There's a bunch of people like you and me that are long-term investors that are thinking about where a company's headed over the next 3, 5, 7 years, right? When I was running those Palantir projections earlier in this video, what are we talking about? We're talking about Palantir over the next 5 years. You think that's the way everybody invests in the market or trades in the market? Of course not. A lot of the market trading is done in milliseconds, in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out, right? You got the swing traders out there that are swinging in and out of these stocks, right? Playing their games. You got, medium-term investors that are maybe investing for the next few quarters. I call a lot of those people momentum investors because they'll be in a stock for a little bit of a longer time, maybe even a year or two, but they're just trying to play a quick upcycle in regards to a company. Maybe they think the earnings are going to be a banger for the next year, so they're just trying to be a momentum investor. And not everybody's thinking about stocks the next 3, 5, 7 years like you and I are, okay? So if people get to make 140% on ELF stock in a matter of a few months, some people are going to say, I'm good with that. Peace. I'm in ELF because I think ELF's going back to the 200s and maybe even a lot higher. And maybe they have a great chance to become a cosmetics giant over this next 10 years and get a market capitalization of tens and billions of dollars. Other people are like, I don't know, I don't want to take that risk. I'm good with selling out here. Respect. But you got to understand that is part of the game. And when you're a stock like ELF that gets some momentum like that, some people are just going to leave it. And you got to understand that. Okay, not everybody's playing the same game that you're playing. Adobe stock's asleep, up to a whole whopping 2% the past 3 months. 2%? Listen, man, this stock's a gift. It reminds me, it's very similar to Google here recently, where stocks that are caught up in this cycle about people are I don't know if they're going to make it with the whole AI, blah, blah, blah. This happens every cycle with these companies, okay? I watched the same exact thing play out with the app revolution. When the app revolution happened, People had a lot of questions about websites. Facebook was a great example. And Meta, people are like, I don't think they're going to be able to make it. They're a website. How are they going to be successful in regards to apps, right? Guess what? I think they did just fine. They did just fine. People way overblow these things, right? They freak out. They panic. Oh my gosh, I don't know. Great companies. They stay innovative. They change their business models. Adobe's already been through a cycle like this. Their CEO's already taken them through a cycle. Adobe's and a lot of their products used to be like one-off buys. They switched their business model to subscription business model. That was a whole like dramatic situation for their business model in the short term and stock price, and they made it through just fine. Like at the end of the day, I look at Adobe and I'm like, they'll be just fine. They're going to be even more relevant with their products and services 5 years from now than they are today, at least in my opinion. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I think I'll be right in the end, right? Now, additionally, Adobe, I spoke about that on this video here. Not sure if you guys got to see this one from 10 or 11 days ago on the channel. 5 stocks I'm buying now, July 2025 edition. If I recall, Adobe was the very first stock I spoke about in that video of those 5 stocks. So you can check out that one, okay? No, I can smell it. I can smell it, baby. Earnings season, it's here. It's here, folks. We're going to start getting bank earnings this earnings season. Now, listen, okay? I'm excited about this earnings season. I think it's going to be a lot of good numbers. I think it's going to be a lot of good guidances. I think CEOs are going to sound more confident than they did the last quarter. I'm looking very forward to this earnings season. But listen, there's going to be some companies that are going to report this earnings season. They're going to have very good numbers, and the stock prices are going to go down. Don't get frustrated. If the company reports great numbers and everything's going exactly the way you expect them to go and you think it's a fair valuation because you've run your projection models, step in and buy those stocks. There's going to be other stocks that report this earnings season that are going to have bad numbers and their stock price is going to go up for whatever reason. Don't get frustrated. That's not your game to play. Whatever happens with other people's stocks is whatever happens. Like, somebody owns some other stock over here and, they report crap numbers and their stock goes up 20%. Cool. Whatever. It doesn't affect you. Hey, that's more money for people to have than they can come buy, your stocks in the future, right? There's more money they can come buy your company's products and services in the future. Good for them. Be happy. Don't get depressed. Like if somebody else makes a bunch of money, it's not coming out of your pocket. It's not coming out of your pocket, baby. Okay? Appreciate you guys joining me as always. Thanks so much for being here. If you're ready to take your game up to a much higher level when it comes to investing, click the pinned comment down there, fill the form. Let's get you access to all of my library of premium courses. Let's get you access to my private Discord chat, all that good stuff. Get you around 6, 7, and 8-figure investors. Let's get you your Steel membership cards mailed to you for 1000X and for the private stock group, all that good stuff. Okay, guys? Appreciate you joining me. Much love and have a great day.